And now I'm very excited to welcome back an analytics and bracket specialist to the odds breaker. You know him from his amazing work over at HaslamMetrics.com. I'm very excited to bring back Mr. Erik Haslam from Haslam Metrics. You can follow him on Twitter at Haslam Metrics. The madness is back, Erik. We are dressed up like Wisconsin homers, just like I expected, my friend.
We are ready for this. This is our Christmas morning. This last Selection Sunday was part of it, and then all of a sudden Thursday comes. I take those days off of work. I haven't worked that day since 1998 or something like that. So, yeah, I gotta get myself ready. I'm gonna be at the bar all day. It's just something we look forward to every year. And then we have that last 3-week sprint, and then it's seven more months of vacation, and then we do it all over again.
There you go. 7 months vacation's nice, but man, you keep up with a lot of changes. I mean, so interesting. Like right when the brackets come out, you got to get all that data. You got to get all the matchups and stuff also all taken care of. That's got to be a little bit of time on your end.
Well, one of the things that, like what I do is I participate in that little bracket matrix fiasco where you try to predict what the committee is going to do. And it's kind of I just do it every year. It's kind of a little bit of a parlor game. It's because, I mean, you're predicting the committee who's imperfect in the first place. And so, it's like, predicting how one student is going to answer a test knowing full well that the student is not going to get 100%. And yet we reward ourselves because I picked the answers of the student who got a 92 on the exam. It's kind of ridiculous and silly in a way, but it's something that, bracketology is a big selling point of March Madness and college basketball. So, a lot of people get into the bracketology. I try to do some automated stuff throughout the year. And then I, formulate my own projections that I send in the bracket matrix at the end of the year. And it's just something to do. So I'm kind of glad that part's over.
Oh, there you go. That in the books, man. It's funny how you mentioned that. I have to predict the incompetence of the committee. It's right. It's like this is how, and this is the same thing with the NFL draft. I'm like, this is what these teams should do, but I don't know if they will. Like 7 wide receivers were drafted in, I think it was 2020. Not one playoff team came out of that.
Right. And it's the exact same thing. It's like and then you have people doing the projections. Hey, I got this many right and this many wrong, and you're like, I'm honestly kind of like, who cares? You're just trying to predict an imperfect system. You're projecting what human beings are going to do, and human beings make mistakes. So it's just something I do every year, and I try to see how close I can get and try to.
It's fun, but what were you wrong on? Or better way to ask it, what did the committee get wrong?
Well, I think the first thing that I think of is that, what we're finding out more and more, and I think I probably learned this in past years and I'm seeing it again, is that once Thursday and Friday hit of that second big week of conference championships, all those games kind of don't matter. And, I'm thinking the team that jumps to mind is Tennessee. Tennessee got really hot there in the SEC tournament. Duke loses in the ACC tournament, and yet they're still sitting right there. Duke was a 7 overall seed. Tennessee was the 10 overall seed. It's just one of those things that, a lot of people are asking the question today, like, why are you even playing the game if it's not going to matter? And I just think that what's happening is they kind of put everything in stone on like Thursday or Friday, and they seed everything. And they go off of that because I think it's probably a little bit too much work to reseed. And then, you have to deal with the specifications of, well, you can't have somebody in your quad or in your pod that you've played before. And then you got to make sure that the top 4 seeds are lined up so you can't have multiple conferences in the top 4. All those little things come into play. But at the same time, you'd like to see Kentucky and Tennessee matter. And it was the rubber match between the two. Tennessee comes out ahead, but it really did nothing for Tennessee. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest issues. It seems like unless there's an auto bid on the line, or you're talking teams that are right next to each other on the seed lines where you can put one ahead of the other, that's the only thing that matters on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Otherwise, it's useless. And I think that's the biggest qualm that people have with the committee is just those games that should matter, especially in the conference tournament and the biggest conferences, they don't matter.
And that's lazy, in my opinion. If that's the way it's got to be, because you just don't want to work Saturday night and Sunday morning, then then do it differently. Have the tournament end. Tell the ACC, tell the Big Ten, end your tournament a day earlier or 2 days earlier, so I don't have to work on Saturday or Sunday. What? Why do we have a committee if that's the case? And I agree with you. I think that's why they're doing that. It makes no sense. And look at Texas A&M. I mean, what kind of reward do they get for having a tougher schedule than Wyoming? And it's been way tougher. I mean, it's not even close. And the way they finished the season is fantastic. How do you not put that into account? Oklahoma's got a little bit of an argument too over some of these. Michigan's a head scratcher for me. I know they scheduled great, but they didn't beat anybody except in the Big Ten, which we all know is a mess. So, those were my issues. And it's not like it matters a ton because there's 60 some teams. Yeah, of course, it's not like college football. It's like you should have been a little bit better, but still, it's always the point where I look at you're rewarding somebody that doesn't deserve it for somebody that, or that does it. Yeah, you're rewarding that doesn't deserve and taking out somebody that does deserve it.
Right. And I had of the projections I had 67 of 68. I had A&M getting in. I thought they did enough. It's the committee puts Notre Dame in over A&M. Notre Dame is 2-8 in quad one. They had really blah predictive metrics, lots of quadrant 3, quadrant 4 opponents. Again, it seems like the committee was not really committed to A&M's wins that particular week. At the end of the week, they beat Florida, they beat Auburn, they beat Arkansas, and they really nothing to show for it, in my opinion. As far as the other stuff, I had two teams that were more than a seed line off, but it doesn't really bother me too much. Iowa State was one of them. I had them. I think I gave them a 9 based on their recent struggles. They were 4-7 down the stretch, but they were 9-8 in quad one. And based on what I've seen in the past, teams that have a quad one winning record usually get that 8 seed or better. Iowa really got penalized based on their recent play, especially in conference play. They got bumped down to an 11. The other team that I missed by more than a seed line was Murray State. That was just more me predicting. I've seen in the past disrespect toward mid-majors like Murray State. It doesn't matter if you have 2 losses or 1 loss or 3 losses, whatever. They usually push them down, especially when they haven't really played anybody or beaten anybody. So I gave them a 9 at the top of the 9 line. They ended up getting a 7. I don't have a problem with the 7. That was just the other one that I was more than a seed line off. But other than that, a lot of the other stuff. You talked about Michigan. I was a little surprised Indiana got the play-in treatment as opposed to Michigan. I thought I'm not that surprised, but I did think that Michigan with that record was really suspect, and that was going to be an easy play-in explanation for the committee saying, well, what were they, 18 and 15 or something like that? Stick them in a play-in game, especially if I thought Indiana earned it over Michigan. But again, the games that week apparently didn't matter too much because they probably had Michigan set in stone ahead of Indiana before everything happened in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, you're right. And we don't have to keep beating a dead horse here. It's just, it's the way it is. And it's what we have to deal with. But, going past that, who cares? We have brackets to fill out.
We have brackets. That's kind of how it always works. We always get mad for like one night. And then after that, we're like, let's just go.
Let's do this. Well, cool, man. Well, you kind of covered my next question, which teams are underseeded and which teams are over. I mean, Tennessee, I expected them to be a 2 seed. I expected Kentucky or Auburn to be on the 1 line. I was surprised that Baylor was 1 line. I think you got to remove Baylor from there for the injury to Jamu Joshua. And, the way they finished good, but it wasn't good enough. I think you can't take 2 from. I personally thought the SEC was the best conference. So I say you got to have one number 1 seed from them. And it was just weird. They took Tennessee, Auburn, and Kentucky and just kind of scrambled them up in the 2s and 3s. So that was a little weird. And I have Boise State a little bit higher than the 8th seed because I mean, they won their conference. I mean, they won it by a lot, by days, like games. I think the next person was 2 games behind them, and then they won their conference tournament. So I thought they deserved a little bit better of a break here. What? Another thing that I wanted to bring up is I wanted to see Boise State play a Power 5 school. I want to see Murray State play a Power 5 school. I wanted to see San Francisco play a Power 5 school, but unfortunately, Memphis is against Boise State and San Francisco is against Murray State. I think that kind of stinks. It's like Yeah, I wanted to kind of be on these teams, right?
They do that every year. It seems that, I mean, that's the stigma or whatever the reputation of the committee is, that they end up giving these mid-majors. They have these mid-majors cannibalize each other. And I don't know if there's any truth behind it, but again, it's kind of interesting you said that, because you see that this year a little bit with Murray State and San Francisco, and you could potentially see St. Mary's in Wyoming. It's San Diego State, and I don't know. Well, Creighton's a Big East, so that doesn't count. But you do see that on occasion, and they always say, "Oh, they love to match up those mid majors against each other." I don't know how much truth is it. I suspect it's probably a little bit of a myth, but still, yeah, you like to see these mid majors be able to prove themselves against the power conference teams. There will be a few opportunities to do that here. Like I said, Loyola Chicago and Ohio State, Davidson, Michigan State. There are going to be some opportunities like that out there.
Yeah, for sure. There absolutely will. Well, cool, man. Let's move into the bracket a little bit without telling me. And I only filled out one bracket, and I'm going to fill out more.
The bracket of integrity, right?
The sheet, the one that matters, right? The one I stand by. Now I'll probably fill out 7 to 10 more, but I'm not going to go there. Like, this was my real bracket. I as somebody in the media and somebody that does this a lot, there's one I stand by, and if I win another one, hell, like, great. I'm not going to say no to money, but
right.
I'm just playing out scenarios. But before I get into that, give me a dark horse that's not necessarily in your bracket to make the Final Four in the NCAA tournament. Maybe if you filled out your third bracket or something, you would have them in your Final Four, Eric.
Well, I think by dark horse, I'm guessing you probably mean a 5 seed or worse. And
let's say 3 seed or worse.
3 seed or worse. Okay, I was gonna go 5 seed or worse, but I would say even this one probably applies. And it's a team that, boy, I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth on this team here tonight. And that's going to be Iowa. And the analytics love Iowa. And if you've watched them play, you know why. And they were climbing very high in my rankings, in the top 5 of my rankings even before the last 2 days, because that's how well they've been playing. They've been blowing up efficiency margins. Were they 12-2 since the start of the month of February? I don't know if you can count them as a dark horse. I probably can, considering they're a 5 seed. But it's largely based on efficiency margins, and that's one of the things what elite teams do is they that's how we measure Gonzaga as being a number 1. You put them up against a bunch of cupcakes in the WCC, and they win by 37. That's how you measure elite teams. They beat the bejesus out of people, and that's what Iowa has kind of done this year. Is they've really beaten up even good teams. They've beaten up. You saw what they did to, what was it, Northwestern, where they hung 112 on them, and it was the highest. I think it was 1.8 points per possession before the game went analytically final. So they've got the talent, and man, when they are on, they're tough to beat. I would say they're a potential sleeper. The other two that I'm going to throw out there, and I always think of UCLA last year, because UCLA, if you remember, UCLA lost the last 3 games of the regular season last year. They go to the Pac-12 tournament. They lose their first game to Oregon State. They go to the tournament as a play-in team. They're down 11.5 to Michigan State. They come back, go to overtime, win that game, and they go to the Final Four and damn near beat Gonzaga. So I always look and say, think about teams that had a high ceiling very early on in the season, even the preseason, and say, what teams could all of a sudden just flip the magic switch and have the leadership, and they can get there and maybe surprise some teams. 2 teams come to mind. One is Texas, and the other is your favorite, Michigan. Those are 2 teams with sky-high ceilings before the season that just didn't deliver. And, weird things happen in the tournament. And the one that I'm eyeing up, like I said, is Texas, in that nobody's really talking about Texas. I think Houston would be another one. Another one people really aren't talking about too much is Houston, because Houston didn't really play anybody. Not many, I don't even think they had a quad 1 victory. I think there might have been one at one point, and then it went away, and then it came back. But people don't really trust Houston for that reason, because they haven't played anybody.
Wisconsin beat them.
Wisconsin beat them, right. But that's a team that could definitely, if Houston could get by a team like Illinois in the second round, and you get a team like Arizona, who's not going to have Kirk Kriisa maybe, all of a sudden.
They will in the Sweet 16, I think.
Did you see his ankle? Oh, my God.
Yeah. So I've been watching him, and he was working out in the pool, lifting it. And these kids, I don't think he should play this weekend. And
no, I don't think he will.
And here's the thing: I'm not sure if they're going to need him, I mean, Bryant's a kind of tricky, but they should handle Bryant. And I mean, at TCU or Seton Hall, if he's somewhat available, maybe 10 minutes, but I say, only use him if need be in that next game, and then just keep him for the next week, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think they can definitely win that second round game without him. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk, and I don't think anything's a cakewalk anymore. Even when I look at, I mean, the ones and the twos for the most part should and in theory be a cakewalk. It wasn't the case last year for Ohio State. But once you hit round 2, anything goes. I mean, we're matching up Gonzaga with Memphis. The way Memphis is playing, and they have the talent to win that game. I mean, if that happens, all bets are off. I mean, I'm still thinking Gonzaga is the team to beat in this tournament. But once you get to that second round, you're matching Arizona up against a pretty good team in either Seton Hall or TCU. That Kirk Creesa injury may be the difference between winning and losing. I don't know.
For sure. Iowa's mine too, really. You stole my thunder, Eric, but I expected it because it's a correct answer to say them. And a lot of people, they might be a public play, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. One thing I noticed about Iowa, Eric, is that their defense is really, really stepped up.
Big time.
And a lot of people didn't notice that. And it took me a while to notice that. But I was like, yeah, they really are playing good defense, and I couldn't believe it. Now they're not exceptionally big, so that makes you wonder what happens if they play an Auburn team who's got some great forwards now. Kansas with McCormick, that's a little worrisome, but their guard play has been fantastic. Bohannon just hitting all those threes. Jesus, his brother played with us for a while. You remember that?
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
So
how many Bohannon brothers are there? There's like 13 of them right now. I don't know.
They're all sprinkled all over the place. Busy parents, man.
Yeah.
Since I can't use Iowa, I'm gonna say St. Mary's could possibly make some noise because Baylor with that injury and the fact that they did it last year. I almost feel like they could trip up against a North Carolina. And when North Carolina is all celebrating, they're so inconsistent. They drop their next game against St. Mary's, and the St. Mary's would have to get past UCLA. But then if they get Kentucky, maybe they get the Kentucky that played last weekend, which was bad. And so I don't have them in my Final Four, but I have them going pretty deep. So we'll get into that too. But St. Mary's is one. And I'll tell you right now, nobody's on Purdue because they're getting slammed in the media. Their defense is like 100 or something on your site. I'd say it's pretty bad. I don't remember what your adjusted defense is.
I think they're I don't know if it's quite that. That's 82nd. Yeah, that's not good.
Okay.
It's pretty much, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it might have been exactly where Ohio State ended up last year.
Right,
82nd, right. And they got bounced by Oral Roberts in the first round. A little hint to everybody out there as well. Ohio State's defense is actually worse this year. I mean, their defense was bad last year. It's worse. They're in the hundreds. And
plus, as
far as defensive efficiency, they got they're worse off. And Purdue, on the other hand, like you said, 82nd in defensive efficiency. That is not elite. That's a gaping hole waiting to be exposed.
It's gaping, and you have to think that it's because Edey doesn't really run around and do a motion offense, and they can kind of work around him. Yeah. But if they figure that out, this team could score with anybody. And so I would think that being that nobody's on them, if you want to win your bracket, maybe you do take one of these shots with Purdue to the Final Four, because I think it's very possible in this bracket. Speaking about these quadrants, the hardest one to me has to be the South. I mean,
is it? Okay.
Well, I mean, you got Arizona number 1, Villanova number 2. Gee, right? Yeah, right. Tennessee, an underseeded number 3. Illinois number 4 that won the Big Ten that could have been a 2 seed. And then Houston, that's a top 5, 6, 7 team on all that, all the. It's like you have all these power teams in one bracket, in one quadrant. It blows my mind. I think that this is the hardest one.
I think it might be for me. I would say it's the second hardest one. I would probably actually go the West, which is actually Gonzaga's bracket. And I look down at, starting going down the list, you have Gonzaga, you have Duke, You have a very, very good underrated Texas Tech team. You have an Arkansas team that flipped the switch in the middle of January and has taken off since then. UConn can be very good. You've seen what Alabama can do when Alabama is at its top game. And then on top of that, you got a very, very, very dangerous Davidson team who just lost, but I still think can make a real big dent. And then on top of that, we talked about teams like Memphis or even a Rutgers or a Notre Dame. Notre Dame with a chip on their shoulder because a lot of people are talking this week that they didn't belong. Me being one of them. All of these teams capable of pulling surprises. So I would think from a standpoint of the most difficult region, I'll probably say the West.
You know what? I agree with that top to bottom. But if I'm just going the hardest teams of the first 5 or 6, then I have to go with the South. But great point. I mean, if you're looking
South is very tough. I mean, the South is tough, no doubt about it. Yeah,
100%. And Colorado State number at 6 kind of ruins it a little bit. I think they're pretty good, but I don't think they're going to make a.
Their resume was worthy of better than a 6. They but the 6 or a 7 was probably in line with their predictive ranking. But the thing is, when it comes to the seeding, typically I look at things and look. A good example is like USC. USC is not nearly as good as a 7 in my opinion, based on the predictive rankings I have. USC is a target for a first round exit. That's in my mind, that's an easy pick for Miami in that one. They're a little bit like Providence, USC. They found ways to win, but they don't impress. And you just wait for a team to come through and just beat the crap out of them, because all season long, like a great example of Providence, sure, they'll beat a Connecticut by 2. They'll also beat a Georgetown by 2. And that's how you lower yourself in the predictive rankings, because when you play Georgetown, you're supposed to beat them by 26, not 2. And that's kind of, what teams like Providence did, what Wisconsin did, what Wyoming did. Those are teams that really did not blow up those efficiency margins. And then you have the flip side where you have the Iowas and the North Carolinas who did blow up those efficiency margins.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even on the Ken Palm, they're not 45 on either offensive or defensive, and they're 34 on luck. So there you go. That's very, very good stuff there. Thank you. It matches up right with Haslametrics. Mm-hmm. Well, all right. So good stuff there, man.
What's your easiest bracket, you think?
Oh, it's definitely Kansas, the Midwest.
Yep, I got the same thing.
Yeah, because Kansas's defensive woes, you've seen them drop some really weird games, and if they're not shooting, they could lose. And just like you said with Ohio State last year, Kansas could be in some trouble there. And then you have the number 2 seed Auburn that faded at the end of the season. Now, if I can get the Auburn that I liked in first week of February, then they could be the winner of the whole thing. But man, I don't know what to think now. Their guard play has been really bad. Yeah. And then you have Wisconsin that plays down to their opponents, and that's why they're ranked so low on your site, because they have tough quadrant wins. They're getting lucky. They're really top 10 in luck. And they're just playing down to their opponents, but they're trying too. It's like if Johnny Davis has a bad game, this team could lose to Colgate.
Right? Oh, I don't doubt it. Yeah, and that's the thing. They rely too much on Johnny Davis, and you had those games throughout the year, the big question mark games. I mean, you have not counting like even the Nebraska game where they lost that game at home at the end of the season, but you had those questionable wins. One was against Nichols. And then I forget who else they played, but it was like one was a 2-point win, one was a 3-point win, and Nichols is rated worse than 200th in the country. And that's, again, that kind of stuff that people say, well, that's an outlier. Well, it happened. You can't just discount it. Yeah. And so those kind of performances bring the Badgers down. And
Illinois State, they won by 4.
That's the other one I was thinking of. Yeah.
And I think Davis might have been out one of those games, but still, it's like their defense can't move like it used to. Vogt is a statue, and Carlson, man, Crowell. I mean, I meant to say tall, but he's kind of.
He was terrible against Nebraska. He was terrible.
He sometimes he just misses every single shot, and then Chucky has bailed them out of many games. When they played Iowa, they hit everything. And that's just, it's like, seriously, against Iowa right now, I would lay the points with Iowa.
And the thing about Wisconsin is they just, I always say that Davison is going to be hot one of 3 games. He's a streaky shooter. He will be on his game, but it's going to be a crapshoot. I mean, you saw it last year by all by all luck against North Carolina in the tournament last year, he had one of those games where he just lit it up from 3-point range, and we buried the Tar Heels in that game. But then I want to say it's like every other game or every third game is this hot game, and then ever since other than that, he's just kind of ho-hum from distance, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. This is definitely the worst Badger defense since 2018 that I can remember. It's bad this year. All right, let's talk a little bit more about now that we hated on our Badgers, even though we look like it even look like
hey, still the easiest region though. I mean, it's
yeah,
and it contains my pot of doom, which I Iowa, Richmond, Providence, and South Dakota State, and I said I might just spin a damn wheel to figure out who's going to come out of that pod because with we've talked about Providence's problems as far as efficiency margins. Iowa being so damn inconsistent. Richmond might get on a roll now. They're finally they're a dangerous team, and then South Dakota State with the best 3-point shooting team in the country. I mean, anything could happen in that pod, what I call the pod of doom. So I'm looking forward to that pod to see who comes out of that.
Okay, so I wrote down today, and I went through all the Thursday games and put notes on every game, looking at all your sites and all the sites I use. I wrote down, if Providence is too stupid to not get around the high ball screens for the 3, then they deserve to freaking lose South Dakota State.
Yeah.
Don't let them screen you and shoot an open 3. Stop that. Let them have the ball down low.
But would you be surprised? Would you? I mean, I don't trust Dakota teams in the tournament. They don't deliver, in my opinion. South Dakota, North Dakota, all those teams, they never really deliver. A lot of people look at them and say, well, they shoot, but they never really deliver. But I look at this situation. If you told me that I'm going to turn this on at some point and see that South Dakota State's winning that game by 19 points, wouldn't shock me one bit. It would just almost be like, well, we all saw this coming, and this is why. If I'm not mistaken, South Dakota State is actually favored in that game. At least they were, I believe, weren't they?
South Dakota State is 2-point dog.
They're a dog now. Okay.
But, I mean, they're still pretty far down in some of the sites. Where do you have South Dakota State and where do you have Providence?
If I'm not mistaken, they're right next to each other. South Dakota State is number 58. Providence is 61.
Okay, so Ken Palm is higher on Providence than you.
Yeah.
I don't know where Torvik is. But that's interesting, and I think it's correct. But the problem with South Dakota State is we don't have much of a sample size except for going through what they did. Who did they play in the non-conference? Right? I
can't even remember because it's
Well, they played Alabama, lost 104-88. They played Washington back when Washington was bad in November, and they lost 87-76, but they were bad too. And then they lost to Idaho, which is bad. And then
Missouri, they lost to Missouri State,
but they at least beat Washington State. So they have Washington State as a 3-point victory. Right now, if I'm going by this, I think that Providence could be the play. I just what I said, if Ed Cooley can't figure this out and have them stop shooting the 3, that's his own stupidity.
I just got this weird feeling. It's so different. I just hate this pod and I love it at the same time because anything could happen. I mean, it is. I've talked about Iowa. They're so damn good right now, but they're so damn inconsistent. I said that they're either going to the Final Four or they're losing on day one. Richmond is a team I've loved for the last 3 years that just great intricate offense under Mooney, just could not for the life of them pull it together when they were supposed to pull it together. And then finally, when the door was shut on them, they reopen it and get the auto bid. You got Providence, who cannot for the life of them build up their efficiency margins. They beat the Butlers and the Georgetowns by 3. And then you have South Dakota State, who really hasn't played anybody, but has arguably the best shooting team in the entire country. Good luck figuring that out. Any one of them could come out of that.
Well, let me ask you this: Providence is the Wisconsin of the Big East, right?
Absolutely, I agree. Yep, absolutely.
Well, who would you rather take? Would you rather take Colgate +8 or South Dakota State +2?
Oh boy, I would almost go. I'm probably going to go South Dakota State on the money line on that one. I'm actually going to do it.
Okay. Well, here you go. I wouldn't be surprised if both hit. First of all, and secondly, South Dakota State. they're getting respect. And so that makes me wonder what Providence is thinking, because they know the line. These kids know the lines these
Absolutely.
days.
You're right.
They're going to come out motivated, but what Wisconsin does have is home court advantage, right?
But I think it works against it. I take the different view. I think Providence starts believing this. The more they hear it, they start questioning themselves. That's what I've always seen. It always seems like someone mentioned this earlier today on Twitter, like you hear teams that, well, this team's, everybody's picking this team to lose. And Providence hears that, and they start looking around and they start questioning their own the ability to play the game. And someone said this on Twitter, is that usually a lot of these people are saying this team is going to beat this team. They're probably right more times than not from what I've seen.
All right. I am not buying into that at all. So I completely
gentleman's bet on that
one. All right. Well, let's do it. Let's do a gentleman's bet. And I'll even give you 2 points, because that's what it's
I'll take what I can get.
All right, buddy. Well, let's get into a couple first round upsets then. I'm going to share my screen, and obviously you're going to be able to see my Final Four, which is cool. This is the next question. But for me, the 4-13 on the left here, I actually think Vermont can do this. I look at Vermont, and the way they handled their business was absolutely fantastic. Let's see where you have Vermont here. You have them pretty high. Okay.
Yeah.
So it looks like you have them number 47. Did I see?
Let me see here. I got it 48.
48. Okay. So I love what they're doing. I love the trend line that you have in their all play percentage right here, how they kind of keep going up. And you have to understand, even though they had a pretty easy schedule, Vermont has beaten the crap out of their teams for the most part. What I like about this Providence team, Providence, I keep saying Providence. What I like about this Vermont team is that they can also shoot the three, and they have a home court now, being at Buffalo, New York. I mean, how many people from Arkansas are going to go up there? Arkansas is probably still a little bit shell-shocked here, what happened in the tournament, and they're shell-shocked a little bit from last year when they lost to, was it Colgate that they lost to?
They were losing. No, they beat Colgate, but remember, they were down big. See, this is a problem with Musselman's teams, especially. It's not so much you're seeing it right now in the second half of the season, but you saw this a lot last year. You saw it early this year, where this team falls behind. And I give them a lot of credit, because this team has as much heart as anybody in the country. I've seen them down a dozen points, 15 points, and rally back to either get the win or get right back into a game. But, like you said, it would not surprise me one bit for Vermont to fly out of the gates and build a double-digit lead very quickly, very much like what Colgate did last year. Arkansas wins that game against Colgate, but, for a while there, we were like, wow, I think that they trail by about 15 or something like that in the first half.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very surprising. I was on Colgate, so I was pretty happy at the moment. Probably started drinking my beer faster or something.
I think
that's what happens to us Wisconsin people here. We drink a little faster when we're excited.
Or it's old fashions or beers or gin martinis in my case. So
I love old fashions, man. Well, I got to tell you, here's another problem with Arkansas. They get past Vermont. UConn is pretty much at home here in Buffalo, New York. So it's like they got screwed, man.
I wonder if that fan base is going to travel for Arkansas, because one of the most crazy fan bases I'm seeing is that Arkansas fan base, and they do travel fairly well. I just don't know if they're going to travel that far to see their team. I don't know. So it'll be very interesting to see. I still like Arkansas. I like what they did last year. I thought, I think they went to the Sweet 16. I think they lost to Baylor. I could definitely see it happening the exact same way again, except this time falling to another future champion. In this case, would be Gonzaga. So we'll see.
There you go. They're going to be going gas prices or the hogs.
Right.
That's what they're going to be trying to decide.
Woo, pig suey.
Woo, pig suey. Awesome stuff. So that's mine. Do you have any ones you want to talk about?
I think from the, I always got to play. I have to pick a play-in winner. That's always my choice. So I'm probably this time. You probably said St. Mary's. I'm always thinking of past tournaments, and I always think of like BYU meeting a play-in team, losing. All of a sudden, I'm thinking along the same lines. WCC team going against a Wyoming or an Indiana, and I think both of those teams have the ability to knock off a St. Mary's. So I have to pick a play-in winner to at least go to the next round, and I'll probably pick that Wyoming Indiana winner. And then I come back to the whole pot of doom. It's, I feel like we could have another 12. I think there's always like a 12 and 13 matchup in there. And I feel like we got another one that could possibly be there. And like I said, it's kind of hypocritical of me talking up Iowa as being, a potential Final Four contender and then endorsing their immediate demise on the other hand. But like I said, they're 357th in consistency. That makes them very hard to trust. And I think if you are going to get that 12 versus 13 matchup somewhere in this tournament, I think Richmond and South Dakota State would probably be it. So I might be inclined to actually say I might just go 12-13 just for the hell, because I like to mix it up a little bit. And then I think Davidson is a team that I think is going to be a popular pick. I think Davidson beats Michigan State and potentially even goes beyond that if they can play a Duke team that I don't think is particularly great, especially probably should not have been on the 2 line. And then you follow that up with a Texas Tech or maybe even an Alabama. And you've seen Alabama as well. Alabama shows up when they want to show up. That isn't very often this year. So if Alabama shows up against a real opponent like a Texas Tech and comes through in that game and then meets a Davidson, they might just fall asleep in that game and Davidson sneaks through all the way to the Elite Eight.
That'd be insane, man.
Yeah.
Texas Tech. Saw a good tweet by the Bear Felica today about every 14 seed that beat a 3 seed over the past few years, it was always a Big 12 team. And then he mentioned Montana State's playing Texas Tech. So
oh boy.
I thought that was
wouldn't that be something, because I thought they've done a fantastic job this year with Mark Adams, taking the lead on the whole thing. And I thought they've looked better. I think Chris Beard has struggled in Texas, but then again, March, weird stuff happens in March. And these teams that sometimes have a higher ceiling and have the talent and haven't delivered, all of a sudden they turn it on. And you saw it last year with UCLA. They were just a mess coming into the tournament. They were a mess in that first half against Michigan State, who was not very good. And then all of a sudden they come through it and they get a couple wins and then they get a break. It comes down to matchups too. They get Abilene Christian, I think, in one of their later games. And that's, they took care of them, and all of a sudden you just get that break where you get maybe 2 games where you play well, and then you get an easier opponent, and next thing you know, you can take on a Gonzaga and almost knock them off. Who knows what would have happened in that game if that Jalen Suggs 3-pointer doesn't go down.
Yeah, no doubt. That'd be absolutely insane if that didn't go down. It's just, and that's the madness that we love about it. And I mean to ask you, do you think there's anything to winning your conference tournament, not let down spot possibly coming into this tournament? Because you talking about Iowa, inconsistent. Yep. Maybe they're a little too fat and happy coming into this thing.
Well, on top of that, how much do you factor in just the amount of play they've put in? I mean, they played 4 straight days in a row. They're playing Northwestern, Rutgers, Indiana, and Purdue 4 straight days. And people would say, well, you're going to get rest in between there. But really, I think of teams that lost very early and they get that extra rest. They're more refreshed. I always have that reservation. Maybe it was because one of my first tournaments first brackets I ever did, I started doing this in like 1990 when I was like 15, 16 years old. But in 1993, a team that went through the ACC tournament was Georgia Tech. And I bought into them, went to the final, wanted them to go to the Final Four, and they lost in the first round to Southern. And not only lost, they got their asses handed to them by Southern. And so I always look at that, in those teams that win their conference tournament, especially the power conference teams, in my opinion, usually don't deliver in the big dance. And there are exceptions. I think of last year, there was, I'm trying to think who it was, Oregon State. Oregon State came out of nowhere, won the Pac-12, and then all of a sudden flew through and made the Elite Eight. So you can follow it up.
Didn't Baylor win too? I can't remember.
Baylor, I don't think. No, I think Oklahoma State won the Big 12 last year, didn't they?
Okay, that you might be right. I think it was Oklahoma State. So that's so. Who else? I think Kansas was the last team to win it, and then win the tournament. I think it's been a while since that happened. So they lost Oklahoma. You're right. Baylor did lose Oklahoma State, and obviously you can't really count Gonzaga
No, I mean, they got it made. I mean, they have some decent opposition. You have BYU and St. Mary's and San Francisco. There's some, they've played some competition, but they get that extra week. They get that whole week off for the most part. Their last, what they play, the championship game on Tuesday. So they're gonna come into their game fresh, not playing in 9 days or something like that.
Yeah, it's been like 9 or 10 days for sure. It was it was a long time ago when they played. It was the St. Mary's March 8th, and it's already March 14th, so 6 days, and they'll play
a week tomorrow. Yeah.
Yep. So 9 days rest. Yeah, and it's perfect for them because they're okay to win their West Coast Conference and then still make it far in the tournament, but they still haven't won one, so we'll see what happens.
I mean, man, it's real. I could see them dropping the ball. It's just, who's going to do it though? Is it going to be Memphis? Does Memphis have a chance of knocking them off the way Memphis has been playing?
No. Here's the thing: Memphis turns the ball over more, too much, and I like Memphis, and I did take a future on them at a big 150 to 1. I took a bunch of big futures for small prices. Maybe I have like 2 and 3 total units. It's like if I get it to a point where one's in the final 4, then I can hedge. You know, and I do that a lot every year, and I don't care about the 3 units if that's the case, because I want something big. I had A&M last week at 100 to 1. I was able to make some money off that ticket by going the other way. So that's what I love to do. But here is my final 4. I have the Zags, I have Kentucky, I had Arizona, and I got Iowa. And I'll tell you this, I had to bust out my eraser a few times. You try to get cute, but this is the bracket you stand by, and you get the most. And the way I do it, you get the most points for the final 4. Now, I like those brackets that reward you by multiplying the seed coming in. You can pick some crazy dark horse to make the final 4. You win the whole thing. But, we just have to work with what most of the nation does. And I got to admit, I tried to not put Gonzaga in. I tried because I don't think I don't think this is the best Gonzaga team in the past 5 years. I think there's probably one, or at least last year, and maybe one better than them, right?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, they're way. Last year's team was. You had Kispert, you had Suggs. They were game changers, and you can add Holmgren this year, but it's just not the same thing in my opinion. This is just not nearly as good a team.
Exactly, and I like Holmgren, but he's skinny, and that's why they lost to Alabama and Duke. And I like how they have this potential rematch here, by the way, between Duke and Gonzaga, and the potential rematch between Arizona and Tennessee, because Arizona did lose to Tennessee. I love that. And I think Arizona was injured when they played that game, if I remember.
You could also have Arizona and Illinois in there. If you remember, that was a great game.
Yep. Arizona beat Illinois, and this is when people were like, "Whoa, this Arizona team, Tommy Lloyd, what?" And so a lot of people, the trendy thing to have is Arizona versus Gonzaga, because Mark Few versus Tommy Lloyd, the teacher versus student, and John Rothstein, I heard him today, had Arizona beating his teacher, which could happen. But the way I look at it is, Kentucky's the most complete team here on the bottom. In my opinion, they just need to keep it together. I've seen the way that they could play together, and I liked what John Calipari said in his interview, saying, "Look, we're not looking past St. Peter's, because if you start doing that, then you don't care about this opponent. Not just that, but the team you're worried about might already get upset by someone else. You're not playing them anyway, right? It's like I kind of like his experience there. I like the big names on Kentucky." And just to be honest with you, I found too many problems with all these other teams to not pick Kentucky. I tried to pick Purdue over them, but I couldn't get there. Now, what I do have is St. Mary's in the Elite 8 versus Kentucky, because I think North Carolina jumps Baylor, and Baylor, and they have one of those inconsistent North Carolina games. How they beat Duke and Cameron. And then they drop the next one against St. Mary's. And St. Mary's does have to get past this one. And UCLA, but it won't shock me if UCLA also took out a North Carolina or a Baylor in this situation. So I like St. Mary's here to be a little bit contrarian, and I'd like the way that they prove they can get up for a game by beating Gonzaga. Just real quick on the top here, Duke, I just think they're too inconsistent themselves. They have Krzyzewski in last year and all that, but they have it really tough, because Texas Tech is probably the best defense in all of the NCAA. And if they get hot enough, they can beat anybody. I think Rutgers is a very good team that looks terrible on efficiency. That's one of the ones that I kind of think that with the senior leadership there, Harper Jr., right? I think that senior leadership is going to step up. Omayuri, that could work wonders in a tournament setting. On this side of the coin, which I said was the hardest bracket, at least Arizona has the path here to the Final Four. I don't like how Houston has to play Illinois here, and whoever comes out of this game is going to have a big letdown situation against Arizona, who just had a decently easy game against Seton Hall or TCU, right?
Yeah.
And then I get down to here. I pick your poison, Tennessee or Nova. I picked Nova because maybe in another bracket I'll have Tennessee going there. I'd be a little worried if it is Tennessee just because they beat Arizona. But at the same time, It's also, you can say, call it a revenge spot. You can pick up any narrative you want. But I just think Arizona's size and speed is going to get to Villanova. So that's my argument there. And here's my argument here. Kansas, they won their tournament just like Iowa did. Iowa's defense is better than Kansas right now. I think right now, today, Iowa's defense is better. Can Iowa hit the shots? Maybe they can. When's the last time Iowa's been in the Final Four, Eric?
Is it never?
Maybe never. Maybe never. I don't remember. It's been a while, and I've been watching this stuff since the 90s.
How long has it been since they've been out of the first weekend? I can't remember the last time they were out of the first weekend.
Yeah, that's true.
McCaffrey's never been out of the first weekend.
No. But that, and I got to tell you, I think they could stay hot. And they could get Kansas. Agbaji has a bad shooting day, they're screwed. If Agbaji has to play great to beat Iowa, and I mean great. That's how good Iowa's playing defense. In Auburn, they have a trouble game against Wisconsin, and I did pick Wisconsin to get by LSU because LSU's got the lame duck coach now. They're a mess. The LSU's going to blow out Iowa State because everyone's going to doubt them. They're going to be like, "Oh, well, screw our coach." So it's that one game bump, and then they drop it to Wisconsin or Colgate, and then Wisconsin against a tough Auburn team. Wisconsin gets beat. Auburn's pretty happy, fat and happy. They get outplayed by Iowa. That's the way I see this. And this is my Final Four, man. Cool. I have Arizona cutting down the nets against Kentucky.
Nice.
Who's yours?
Yeah, for me, I got the I do a couple brackets. One of them is the one where I just don't pick it. I just go straight on analytics using my site. And what I typically want to do is, and you've seen this behavior in I think the last 4 tournaments, you always have, typically you have 2 1 seeds, you have a 2 or a 3, and then you have somebody else. And it's really consistent. If you look back at the last 4 or 5 tournaments, that's the formula. There was one year, I think, where instead of a 1 and 2 1 seeds, there was a 1 and a 2, and the 2 was Michigan State, I think. But other than that, it's typically 2 1s, a 2 or a 3, and then somebody else. And if you follow my analytics, you're going to see that the top 4 teams are going to pick up exactly what that is. The 2 1s are going to be Gonzaga and Arizona. The 2 is going to be Kentucky, and then the other one is going to be 5 seed Iowa. So that's what if you go strictly based on the analytics, you're going to have Gonzaga versus Kentucky on one side. You're going to have Arizona versus Iowa on the other. And that really makes the assumption that Iowa can hold their act together for the entire time, those 4 games in a row. Granted, they're 12 and 2, 13 and 2 since the start of February. So inconsistent though during the year. I will not pick that myself. That's the analytics speaking. The analytics probably do perform better than my eye test. But if I'm doing my own picks, I'm going to also follow that same recipe of having 2 1s, a 2 and a 3, and then somebody else. And for mine, you're going to get a rematch. On one side of the 2 1s, you're going to have Gonzaga versus Baylor. On the other side, you're going to get number 2 Auburn, and you're going to get number 4 Illinois. I think Illinois might be playing with a chip. Remember what happened to them last year? They got bounced. They were probably playing as good a basketball as anybody coming in that NCAA tournament, and they got run out by Cameron Krutwig and Loyola Chicago. So they remember that if they can get past a team like Houston, I think you can potentially beat a weakened Arizona team. Again, I don't know how effective Kirk Reese is going to be in this tournament. That's that when you see that picture today of his ankle, and it's high ankle sprain, and there's a lot of swelling and a lot of, the blood on the inside of the leg. You can see it. It's just kind of nasty. And I'm like, I agree with you and say he's definitely not playing this week. I'll say that right now. If he's playing this week, I'll be surprised. Now, will he be healthy enough for the following week? If it was a low ankle sprain, I'd say probably yes, but high ankle sprains could be a big time problem. I think that Illinois has the ability to get past. I mean, they have the Coburn in the inside. You have game changers on that offense. I think they have ability. I think you can see Arizona get upset. I wouldn't be surprised. You see a 1 seed occasionally go down. Maybe Seton Hall or someone takes down Arizona in round 2. It's not unheard of. And then all of a sudden, a team like Illinois gets that break, kind of like what UCLA got last year when they faced, I think, Abilene Christian in the Sweet 16. Maybe Illinois gets a break facing a Seton Hall, and then moves down, and maybe you get through. I don't know if Villanova or Tennessee get through on that side, but I got to pick somebody who's outside the top 3, and I'm going to go with Illinois on that one.
All right, man. No, that's interesting, and I like it because I got 50 to 1 on Illinois. Come on,
there you go.
Let's go, Illinois.
Let's make some money.
And my problem with Illinois is I think Io DeSumo was just so good last year, and they took a step down. I know Curbelo has been good, but he's inconsistent a little bit. But yeah. Trust me, I want Illinois to go far because that's one of my plays that I made, and so I would be completely cool with your bracket right there. Kicking some butt. So I just looked at his picture as well, and yeah, that's nasty. I had one of those high ankle sprains, and it took me 3 weeks, and I was 20 years old when it happened, and I was playing basketball in a barn, and on the foundation edge, I caught the lip, and I went down with my ankle caught that way over the foundation, all my weight on it. It was the most painful ankle sprain I've ever had, and I'm serious. I was out. I couldn't walk well for 3 weeks. And so if he can get out of this by this week, it'd be an absolute freaking miracle. And I'll take what he's having.
You heard him yelling when that happened. I mean, I've had plenty of sprained ankles over the years, either playing basketball or playing volleyball. And when you typically do it, it's the low ankle sprain, you do it and it hurts like a mother, but you just kind of like grimace and you just kind of walk it off, and it's a little swollen the next day, and you're probably out of action for probably a good week or something like that. But when you get those high ankle sprains are far worse. And you heard him when he went down, he was pounding the floor and then throwing a few expletives around while he's laying there.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you saw that live, but he knew that he had done something really, really, really bad. So, I think he's a valuable part of that team. I love the size they have inside, but I think you need that 1-2 punch. You need the shooting ability. You got Tubelis, you got Koloko on the inside. I think that's a great thing to have for them. But, I just think that he's a key part to that team's success, Kirk Reason.
Yeah, because even in 2 weeks during Sweet 16, he's not going to be perfect. You got to cut with those ankles too. So you're really questioning my pick right now, Eric.
But the thing about March Madness is it's madness for a reason. You never know what's going to happen.
I'm just messing with you. It's funny. I'm gonna use the narrative of that the team comes together. They learn to be even better without Kriisa. Kriisa comes back for the Elite Eight. Plays and they're just way better, and all is merry in Arizona takes.
Hey, I'll say this. I mean, think you mentioned DeSumo last year. Remember, DeSumo wasn't playing, and all of a sudden there was Michigan was a 1 seed last year, if I'm not mistaken. And then so late in the year, DeSumo is not playing. They're playing in Ann Arbor, and everybody jumps to bet on, myself included, jumps to bet on Michigan in that game. And what happened? Illinois won. Illinois won by I think 23.
I mean, and it's an injury bump. That first game out, the rest of the team plays out of their minds. That's how it is. But they've already had that, and they won their Pac-12 tournament. So it's hard to factor that in. So just real quick, my other pick will be Auburn eventually in my let's just say secondary bracket. We call it one of my secondary. I think Auburn's just overlooked right now. The way I look at it is like, what if I was filling this out at the end of January? I'd have Auburn winning it all. So why wouldn't I now?
One of the things I'll say about Auburn is we talk about one of the things that are on my site is I measure is consistency, and consistency. You've seen teams like Iowa, Villanova, Tennessee, North Carolina, big time. North Carolina is the worst. The two worst are North Carolina and Iowa. Those are teams you can't trust because as good as they can be, they're all over the place. And if you need to have consistency in order to have success, because if you're going to the Final Four, you got to play well for 4 straight games, probably. The thing I've always liked about Auburn and what makes Auburn an appealing pick for me is that they are 7th in the country in consistency, which means they are exactly what the analytics say they are every game for the most part. The downside of Auburn is that from an earlier standpoint, they've regressed a little bit. So compared to their earlier play, the momentum is just not there where it once was. So like you said, they're not playing their best basketball right now, but at the same time, this is a team that from a standpoint of us projecting both offensive and defensive efficiency on a nightly basis, Auburn doesn't usually go too far away from where the projection is. So that might be a team that if you're looking for consistency, Auburn is your best bet.
100%. And you know what? They're on the bottom of their momentum. I like getting on fading a team when they're like just their momentum's coming down. But now if they're at the bottom, this could completely shoot that back the opposite way. You know, it's just how things are. So this Auburn will be a pick for me. I just don't know when to use it. And their all play percentage went down, but not by that much. They had some bad luck as well.
They trickled down a little bit. I mean, it trickled down to 14th. They were briefly did they ever get to number 1? I don't think they ever got to number 1.
No, number 2 or 3 probably.
Yeah, 2 or 3. I think there were 2, but other than that, they trickled down to 14 or something like that, but that's still good enough to win the whole thing.
No doubt. So you already mentioned that. You got Illinois cutting it on the Nets then?
No. For both of them, I'm going Gonzaga all the way.
Okay.
I have Illinois going to the Final Four, but no, when it comes to the championship for both of them, I'm probably going Gonzaga. I remember with Drew Timme seeing what he was saying to his teammates after they got blown out by Baylor in the championship game last year. I remember sitting here watching it on the TV, and then they asked him about it the next day. I tweeted about it the next day, and I said that Drew Timme kind of had the body language of a guy who is telling his players, his teammates, that remember how this feels, and next year we do it right. And at that moment, I kind of said to myself, I'm going to ride that Gonzaga train all the way off the cliff if I have to. But I don't think they're as good of a Gonzaga team as they were a year ago. But to their benefit, I don't think the field is as good either. They don't have to deal with that 3-headed backcourt of that Baylor had last year. It's
Mitchell and Butler
and Teague. Yeah, they don't have to worry about that anymore. So I look at the teams that are probably ranked after. I think I said something. I tweeted this about, what was it, last week? Or I said the teams ranked number 2 to number 12, and at the time I think it was Arizona and Houston. Arizona was 2 at the time, and Houston was 12. On a neutral court, the projected difference between 2 and 12 was only 1.88 points. Oh. So you have so much parity in that 2 to 12 range where nobody is really fantastic. And then you have Gonzaga, who has a little separation over everybody else. I still think they're the team to beat. I think this is their year, but I probably said that last year, and I'll probably say it next year too.
You know, I'm going to have one bracket out of the ones I fill out with Gonzaga, and I'm not going to have probably any other number 1 seeds in it, because if I want to win with Gonzaga, I have to win right. And if I'm going to take the most popular pick in the brackets to win it all, you'll be damned if I'm going to have other 1 seeds there. I'm going to have somebody else. I'll tell you.
Yeah,
that right now,
right. Man. Yeah, but go look at that 1-1 that formula, that 1 and a 1, and then either a 2 and a 3 or something after that. I ask everybody, look out there, go back the last 5 years, and you're going to see that same kind of thing every single year, be it that other team is always out there. Last year was UCLA. There was another year it was South Carolina was a 7 seed. Auburn was a 5 seed, I believe, that one year. They went to the Final Four a few years ago. It just always happens that way. It's always 2 number 1s, a 2 and a 3, and then somebody else.
Sure is, man. So before we go, did you make any bets yet on these first round games?
No, I have not, and I'm probably not going to do that. I'm not a huge, as much as I kind of fell, ass backwards into the gambling industry by just running this. It was never my intention. It was always just kind of like, I just kind of want to know who the great teams were, and it just kind of turned. At first, I was trying to get into college basketball, and this seems like kind of just wandered into the gambling realm. But no, I'm as much as I provide this stuff, I do make daily wagers, but I usually do them the morning of. I'm much more of a casual gambler than anything else. So I just do it more for fun. I know a lot of people put a lot of money on my stuff, and hopefully they're making a lot of money off of my stuff. But for me, it's probably pennies on the dollar compared to what these people are making. So I'll probably look at it on. I'm guessing tomorrow I'll look at the games that are out there as far as the playing games and the NIT games. But then as far as the NCAA tournament games, I'll probably take a peek at them on Wednesday night and probably place a few wagers.
All right, man. No, good answer. I think you gave us one already with Miami. So
there you go. Well, if anyone who follows me on Twitter knows how much shit I love to give Patelis. If you know Tony Patelis, he's a big USC guy, and whenever USC loses, I just revel in their demise. And so, really, I mean, when you look at where they're ranked on my site right now, they're down at 59, despite being at 26 and 17. I promise you, that is not anything that I did on purpose. That was actually that's all algorithm. That's how much the algorithm, the analytics, do not believe in USC. That's why I'm picking Miami in round one. But it's kind of funny. We always joke about USC and I don't know. Maybe they deliver again. They did last year. They went to what? The Elite Eight last year? Pac-12 did really well.
Yeah, they did, but they lost their best tall guy.
Evan Mobley, yeah.
Yeah, the other Mobley's there. That's
yeah.
Well, no, I don't disagree with that at all. So I might be right there with you on Miami. Where could our listeners and viewers get your information or donate to your site?
If you guys want to, you can go out to see my rankings, my ratings, my all play estimates, my projections, even bracketology deserves, automated game summaries, automated team summaries over at haslametrics.com. That's HASLAMETRICS. Otherwise, if you guys are out on Twitter, you can find me out there as well. I like to have a good time with things, especially with college basketball. I like to keep it light, with a little bit of humor mixed in. And I am out there. My handle out there on Twitter is at Haslametrics.
At the obvious. Thanks so much for coming on, Erik. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Have a good night.